Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article of discussion is about the Food Corporation of India. The Food Corporation of India is a statutory body, which means this was established by an act of the Parliament, and this comes under the administrative control of Ministry of Consumer Affairs. What are the objectives of the Food Corporation of India? They are very simple. What are those? First, purchase the food products, store these food products, and ultimately distribute these food products. For which they purchase all these food products from the farmers, and because they are purchasing from the farmers, they have to ensure the price support system for the farmers so that they are able to safeguard the interest of the poor farmers. Followed by this, they have to store it, and after storing it, they have to distribute these food grains across the length and breadth of India for the public distribution system. After this has been done, they also will have to ensure that there is a satisfactory level of operational and buffer stocks of the food grains to ensure the national food security. And these are the objectives of the Food Corporation of India. But they are beset with certain concerns as well. What are the various operational inefficiencies with respect to the Food Corporation of India? The Food Corporation of India is a white elephant. Why is it called so? Because of inefficiencies when it comes to operational inconsistencies. For maintaining this Food Corporation of India, there is large expense that the government will have to invest. Because the expense is comparatively on the higher level, that's the primary reason it is called as white elephant. Even in the 1970s and 1980s, there were poor storage conditions. Why? Because the scientific principles of maintenance was not being practiced by this organization. Apart from that, the stocks were far beyond the capacity. Let's say if this corporation had the capacity to store about 1 ton of food grains, this is just hypothetical numbers, but the incoming purchase of this particular food grain were much beyond 1 ton. So the stocks were far beyond the capacity, the storage capacity remained inadequate, and the existing capacity that was there was highly unutilized as well. This meant that all the food that was stored in the Food Corporation of India became the food for the pests as well as the rats. Followed by this, in the late 1990s, the Food Corporation of India was often termed as the food corruption of India. Why was it called so? That is because of the diversion of the food grains to the black market. Whatever was procured and purchased from the farmers were sold at a very less price in the black market. The food grains were also sold to the private ration dealers, and these people, that is the red tape and the personnel who were working with the Food Corporation of India, had a close nexus with the private ration dealers as well. These were the major concerns when it comes to the operational inefficiencies of the Food Corporation of India. In spite of all these troubles, in spite of all these reputational flaws in the past, what the Food Corporation of India was able to do was it was able to deliver when it was important. We are living in a time of crisis because of COVID-19. There are large number of migrant workers who are stranded in different parts of India, and it is the Food Corporation of India which is able to procure, store and transport all these food grains so that it is ultimately able to serve the migrant workers and the poor people as well. Added to this, the Food Corporation of India has also simplified the process. There are multiple non-state actors and the non-governmental organizations. They are also able to procure the food from the Food Corporation of India directly from their depots, doing away with the e-auctions as well. So at the time of crisis, the Food Corporation of India is able to deliver. In spite of all these accomplishments, what the Food Corporation of India will have to enhance is with respect to its operational efficiencies. How do we do it? Previously, when the Food Corporation of India transported all the procured food items, it basically transported them via the rail services. Why does it believe in transporting these food procured on railway services, and that is because of two reasons. One is because of the cost factor, the other is because of the time factor. When it comes to the cost factor, the Food Corporation of India believes transporting via the road becomes a costly affair, so they had to transport it via the rails, and at the same time transporting all these food grains via the train means they are also saving on the time as well. That is why they believed in transporting this on the railway services. But in the current scenario, there are people who are locked up in multiple parts of India. They are in remote corners of India. So what we will require is also transportation via the roads. So apart from the rail transportation, wherever the migrant workers are stranded, food is not being supplied, public distribution system is not adequate enough, what the Food Corporation of India will have to do, use the road mechanism to deliver the food to these people. The second argument that we have to understand is we have to identify the food insecure hotspots. What are these food insecure hotspots? These are places where markets are not functioning efficiently. So you have the private markets, you have the public markets. The private markets in these places are not working effectively. Then you also have large number of migrant workers who have gone back to their native places. They do not have any jobs right now, so they will also have to be provided with the food grains as well. Added with this, what the state governments will also have to do is to identify these food insecure hotspots and also ensure that Food Corporation of India sends these important food grains to these state governments, and the state governments will have to consolidate and keep up all these food grains in silos as well, and also save these food grains in containers. In case there are any disruptions that we see in the near future, the Food Corporation of India will have to accommodate the food grains to the state government. In order to achieve this, the state government will have to coordinate with the Food Corporation of India and identify all these food grains and save them and maintain these stocks at the block headquarters. The third argument put across by the author is that the central government will have to release stocks over and above the existing allocations. The central government, through its policies of public distribution system and the Pradhana Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, has already released enough stocks. But what the author suggests is that the central government will have to release more stocks in the near future, and when it is releasing these stocks, it should not seek money from the state government. As we recently discussed, the state government are already deficient with funds. Why are they deficient? Because 90% of their taxation comes from liquor or from petroleum products or from stamp duties or from property duties. Because all these activities are comparatively low due to non-activities in the COVID-19 period, that's the primary reason the central government will have to take the onus on itself so that it is able to distribute the food grains on its own cost and not put this pressure on the state government. The last and the most important suggestion given in this article is logistic support that needs to be provided to the farmers. Because of COVID-19 issues, farmers are not able to send their food grains directly into the market because they do not have the transport facilities. There are few farmer production organizations which are helping them so that these farmers are able to reach the consumers directly. But unfortunately, in spite of this support, there are logistical issues. So what the Food Corporation of India will have to do is to provide this logistical support so that the farmers get the right price support system, as we initially discussed as the major objective of the Food Corporation of India. So once this COVID-19 issue is done, the question about relevance of the Food Corporation of India will again start haunting the Food Corporation of India. In the year 2015, the Shant Kumar Committee report had also said that the Food Corporation of India will have to let go its dominant role in procurement and distribution of grain as well. Because of large scale inconsistencies in the past, there has always been a black question mark on the Food Corporation of India. In order to remove this particular tag, the Food Corporation of India will have to rework on its operational efficiencies. How? The wastage has to be brought down, the pilferage and the leakage has to be stopped. There has to be a track tracking with respect to where this production has been started and where it has been sent. So what we require is the GPS tracking for the transporting, and at the same time there has to be a CCTV cameras that have to be installed in all the storage areas as well, so that this can ultimately reduce the pilferage and loss due to pests as well as rats. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about the Kaveri water issue. Back in the year 2018, the Supreme Court directed the central government, that is the Union Water Resource Ministry, which is currently called as the Jal Shakti Ministry, to form what is called as the Kaveri Water Management Authority. Because the Supreme Court ordered for it, the central government established the Kaveri Water Management Authority. What does it do? This will basically address the dispute of water sharing between the states of Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and the Union Territory of Puducherry. Now let's look at the institutional structure. The Kaveri Water Management Authority will have a chairman. Further, it will have about 8 members. 2 will be the permanent members and 6 will be the part-time members. What is the present context? Why are we discussing this article? That is because the central government has recently issued a notification. According to this notification, the Central Water Management Authority will now be coming under the administrative control of Jal Shakti Ministry. Because it is now coming under the administrative control of Jal Shakti Ministry, few political parties, opposition party leaders and few farmer organizations have concerns with respect to this notification. What are the opposition claims? They believe the minute this particular Kaveri Water Management Authority comes into the fold of Jal Shakti Ministry, they would become the puppets of the central government. When this particular institution was established in the year 2018, it was under the control of Union Water Resource Ministry. They assumed as this was under the Union Water Resource Ministry, it was comparatively an independent body. They had an autonomous organizational setup. But now, since it is going under the Jal Shakti Ministry, the center's move will erode the autonomy and dilute the powers of the authority. The whole idea of being an independent body will now be sidelined as this is brought under the Jal Shakti Ministry. These are the apprehensions, the fears that these people have posted against this particular move. But this argument falls completely flat. Why? Let's take the example of the Kaveri River Authority. Before the establishment of this Kaveri Water Management Authority, there was the presence of Kaveri River Authority. This was under the administrative control of Prime Minister as the chairman and all the chief ministers of the basin state as members, and this was under the control of the Union Water Resource Ministry. The previous authority was also under the Union Water Resource Ministry. All that the present government has done, it has moved the Union Water Resource Ministry into a new ministry called as Jal Shakti Ministry, and this Jal Shakti Ministry is having under its control the Kaveri Water Management Authority. So there is no difference. So their argument of losing the autonomy completely falls flat is one such argument. Apart from this, there are about 8 interstate water boards which are also part of the Jal Shakti Ministry, and added to this, along with the Kaveri Water Management Authority, there are 4 other bodies including the Krishna and the Godavari Water Management Boards, which have all been in existence since the year 2014, and they have been coming under this particular ministry as well. So their claim that the central government will now start imposing the views on this particular authority completely falls flat. What we also have to realize, what was once implicit under the Union Water Resource Ministry is now made explicit. So there was an administrative lapse without the establishment of this notification. But now with this notification released, what was implicit under the Union Water Resource Ministry becomes explicit with the notification under the Jal Shakti Ministry. If there is anything that these regional parties, the farmer organization, the opposition party leaders will have to question the government, it is about the efficiency and the functioning of the Kaveri Water Management Authority. This Kaveri Water Management Authority was initiated in the year 2018. From the year up until 2020, This does not have a full-fledged chairman. This means that the central government has not appointed the chairman. It is this that the opposition parties will have to clamor upon. Added to the flight of the operations is the central government and other regional political parties do not want to take risk with respect to the Kaveri issue. Why? Because this is a very sensitive issue and an emotional issue both on the cultural front and also on the political front. In case they go against the people, they have the fear of alienating the voters. These are the issues that they have to question their own ideology as well as the functioning of this particular authority. In the near future, if the central government will have to do something, it has to ensure that this chairman is immediately appointed and this particular authority starts functioning in an efficient manner. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says India flays not for Gilgit-Baltistan polls. Before we understand what this article is, we will have to look a bit at the background. The Gilgit-Baltistan is a region. It is on the northwestern frontier of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Under the Raja of Jammu and Kashmir, which happens to be the princely state, it consisted of 5 different regions in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. What are those? It included Jammu, Kashmir, Ladakh, Gilgit Agency. These are the 5 regions which were present in the state of Maharaja. Now let us focus on the British rule. Why British rule? Because the British also had control on the state of Jammu and Kashmir before the Indian Independence Act. The British officers had fears and apprehensions across the northwestern border of India. Why? Because this was a region which was controlled by the Soviet Union. There was no Tajikistan, there was no Uzbekistan. What we had was Central Asia, and this Central Asia was controlled by Soviet Union. The British always had apprehensions that there could be incursions from the Soviet Union. So what they did, they secured this particular region on the northwestern frontier. And after 1917, because of the October Revolution that happened in the Soviet Union, the anxieties of the British officers further increased. The same message was delivered to the Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir. Aware of the possible repercussions, the Maharaja of Kashmir agreed to lease this Gilgit agency to the government of British. So in the year 1935, the British government took over this region of Gilgit agency for a period of about 60 years, which was the lease period that the British government took. Because the British government also took over the custodian of this particular region, what they had was appointment of the British officers. So it was these British officers who were taking care of the Gilgit agency as well as the Gilgit Wazarat, which was already under the control of the British. Now what happens? The Indian Independence Act is passed. So the British ultimately had to break this lease agreement. After breaking of this lease agreement, places like Gilgit Wazarat as well as Gilgit agency goes back to the ruler of Jammu and Kashmir, and that happens to be the Maharaja. While all this was happening, there were people who were employed with the Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir, and they were the British administrative personnel, and they are called as Gilgit Scouts. These Gilgit Scouts were not happy with the move of the British government or the British crown. So what do? They immediately started having a close nexus with their fellow pals who were placed in Pakistan. Why were they not happy? Because their powers will be completely stripped now and they would not have any powers. So they had a close cooperation with their fellow pals who were present in Karachi as well as in Peshawar. They leaked some information, and that is when Pakistan started entering the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and they started invading the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and with the help of these Gilgit Scouts and also because of close cooperation, they were able to invade and capture this Gilgit-Baltistan region. Kindly note, the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India, and Pakistan has illegally occupied this particular region of Gilgit-Baltistan. So this region of Gilgit-Baltistan was initially called as northern areas of Pakistan. While all this were happening, there were difficulties with respect to the governing of this particular region. Why? Because this particular region was completely Shia dominated, but was Pakistan, it was Sunni dominated. So they had to bring about a demographic change. And when you go back to the year 1927, there was a law that was passed by the Maharaja of Kashmir. He said outsiders apart apart from the state of Jammu and Kashmir residents will not be able to buy the property. But then there was a particular ruling that came in the year 1974. This was a rule passed by Pakistan where outsiders could also buy property in the Gilgit-Baltistan region, which is also called as northern areas of Pakistan, which means the entire demography of Gilgit-Baltistan was completely changed. But in spite of this particular ruling, they were still not able to get complete control of Gilgit-Baltistan. That's the reason they came up with an order called as Gilgit-Baltistan Empowerment and Self-Governance Order of 2009. So what is this particular rule? Until 2009, this particular region of Gilgit-Baltistan was completely controlled by the central government. People started fighting for more powers. That is when they passed this particular order of 2009. According to this particular order, they granted self-rule to the people of Gilgit-Baltistan. So this self-rule meant that there would be an establishment of the assembly and there would also be an establishment of Gilgit-Baltistan Council. So until 2009, they didn't have the government of their own. It was an independent autonomous region that was controlled by the central government of Pakistan. But after this 2009 order, there was a provincial government that was established in this autonomous region where they had an assembly and also an establishment of council. This autonomous region will have a legislature and that will have a head of the government, and that is what is called as chief minister. Then they will also have a council as well, and this council will be headed by a chairman, and the chairman happens to be the Prime Minister of Pakistan. This will also have a vice chairman as well, and this vice chairman will be the head of the state, and that happens to be the governor. At this particular moment, you may realize that because the people were asking for more powers, Pakistan did establish a chief minister, but majority of the power, the concentration of power was wielded by the council. So all those powers and control and resources and revenues were wielded by the council, which was headed by the Prime Minister and was assisted by the governor. This is when the Pakistan government realized that they were still not able to capture power in the Gilgit-Baltistan region, and ultimately what they came up is what is called as the Gilgit-Baltistan Order of 2018. This Gilgit-Baltistan Order of 2018 was to be replacing the Gilgit-Baltistan Empowerment and Self-Governance Order. The Gilgit-Baltistan Order of 2018 further provided fundamental rights to the people of Gilgit-Baltistan. So these fundamental rights were equivalent to those that were provided to the people who were present in provinces. So what are these provinces? These are nothing but the states like we have in India. What are the 4 provinces? This includes Sindh, Punjab, Baluchistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So what this particular movement, that all the fundamental rights that were provided to those people who were in provinces were also to be provided to the people of Gilgit-Baltistan. But one thing that we have to understand is this is an autonomous region. This is a disputed area. If Pakistan had any plans of accommodating the same as a province of Pakistan, it would come under the global lens, and that is when Pakistan would lose its reputation. So in an indirect way, what Pakistan did, it started consolidating the power with this Gilgit-Baltistan order, and they further consolidated power more with this particular order. So what this Gilgit-Baltistan order has done, it has consolidated the power of the central government in Pakistan and has given very limited power to the people of Gilgit-Baltistan. So in the year 2015, there were elections that was conducted, and these elections derived its power from the 2009 order. The period for which the elections took place was for 5 years. So when is the end period? It is in the year 2020. So now in the year 2020, their term would end in the month of June. So that is why there would be elections in the month of June. So the central government of Pakistan has consolidated all power and they are planning to conduct the elections in the month of June, and that is when during this transition period from June up until September, there would be a provision where there would be a caretaker government. That is why India has opposed this particular move, and it is asking Pakistan, how can Pakistan conduct these elections when Gilgit-Baltistan is an integral part of India? That is why the Ministry of External Affairs has said that government of Pakistan or its judiciary has no locus standi on territories illegally and forcibly occupied by it. India completely rejects such actions and continued attempts to bring material changes in Pakistan occupied areas of Indian territory of Jammu and Kashmir. So that is why India has been opposing this particular move of conducting elections by Pakistan. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about MP Latch Fund and its suspension. An elaborate analysis of this has been explained on 7th of April 2020 under the first topic, MP Latch suspended, PM MPs to take 30% salary cut. So an elaborate analysis of the entire picture has been explained, so kindly look into it. Now let's look into some of the preliminary practice questions. Consider the following statements with respect to Jagannath Rath Yatra. It is a Hindu festival associated with Lord Jagannath held at Puri in Odisha. The idols are made of metal. The chariots of the deities are newly built every year. Which of the above statements are correct? The answer to this is 1 and 3 only. Why? The idols are not made of metal, but instead they are made of wood, and that is why the answer to this is 1 and 3. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference made under this article. So kindly note, this Jagannath Yatra is associated with Lord Jagannath, which is held at Puri in Odisha. Lord Jagannath is an avatar of Lord Vishnu, which happens to be Rama or even Krishna. It is the oldest Rath Yatra taking place in India and the world, whose descriptions can be found in Brahma Purana, Padma Purana, Skanda Purana and Kapila Samhita. The festival marks the annual ceremonial procession of Lord Jagannath, his elder brother Balabhadra and younger sister Subhadra, who go on an annual vacation traveling on grand chariots from Puri temple to their aunt's place in Gundicha temple. Naba Kalebara is a ritual that holds a significant place in the existence of Jagannath temple in Odisha. It is a ritual which involves the replacing of existing wooden idols of Lord Jagannath, Balabhadra and their sister Subhadra, and the image of Lord Sudarshana Chakra with newly carved ones. It is this process of replacement of wood idols is what is called as Naba Kalebara. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to Dandanata, which of the following statements is or correct? It is a seasonal folk dance festival organized in the state of Gujarat. Only male persons take part in the festival. It is asking for the correct statement, so the answer is 2 only. Why is it wrong? Because it is a festival not held in Gujarat, but it is a festival which is conducted in Odisha. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Kindly remember, it is a seasonal folk dance festival organized in different parts of South Odisha, particularly in Ganjam district, the heartland of ancient Kalinga Empire. The festival is celebrated in the month of Chaitra. Danda, as the name implies, is self-inflicted pain, with the Danduas, who happen to be the people who take part in the festival, undergo to pay their obeisance to Lord Kali. It is also a form of worshipping Lord Shiva and his consort Parvati. Only male persons take part in this festival. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements with respect to UV Blaster. It was developed by DRDO. It is an ultraviolet sanitizer which can be used for electronic equipments and computers. Which of the above statements are correct? Both the statements are correct. It is developed by DRDO and this is an ultraviolet sanitizer. Let's say we have computers or we have any other electronic gadgets. We would not be able to sanitize them with chemicals. So what we have is the development of a UV sanitizer, and that which has been developed by the DRDO. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following pairs: Kaziranga National Park, Assam; Manas National Park, Sikkim; Namdapha National Park, Nagaland. Which of the above pairs is or correctly matched? The answer to this is 1 only. Why? The Manas National Park is not in Sikkim, it is also in Assam, and the Namdapha National Park is a protected area in Arunachal Pradesh. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given in these articles. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following countries: Iran, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Oman and Iraq. Which of the above are the members of Gulf Cooperation Council? The answer to this is 2, 3, and 4. Iran and Iraq are not part of the Gulf Cooperation Council. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given in this article. Kindly remember, the Gulf Cooperation Council will have Saudi Arabia, Oman, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to the use of nanotechnology in the health sector, which of the following statements is correct? Targeted drug delivery is made possible by nanotechnology. Nanotechnology can largely contribute to gene therapy. Select the correct answer using the code given below. The answer to this is both 1 and 2. Now let's look into the mains practice question. Despite the Food Corporation of India plagued by functional inefficiencies, explain how the FCI was able to ensure food and nutritional security in the middle of COVID-19 crisis. Also suggest measures to enhance its performance. Should the MPLAT scheme be completely abolished? Critically analyze. So please write all your answers on the comment section so that you guys can have a peer review and also come up with constructive criticism. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.